Welcome to the IAN talk show on a series that's very exciting, Legends in Neurology. And it's my privilege and honor here today to welcome Professor Sarosh Katrak, who has been my teacher, mentor at the Just Look Hospital. And it's a great pleasure to be here with him today. Professor Katrak, as you know, has had a very engaging and illustrious neurology career at the JJ Hospital, at the Just Look Hospital, within the realm of the Indian Academy of Neurology, and as a distinguished teacher and purveyor of neurology values to innumerable students. And it would be a great honor and fun for the audience to learn to know him as the person he is. So welcome, Dr. Katrak, and it's great to have you here with us today.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
At the outset, let us ask you about your childhood and your early upbringing, and what brought you to medicine and neurology.
Fine. I was the third child of Menu and Rati Katrak, a middle class, average Parsi Zoroastrian family. We were a family of 5, but we were staying with my paternal grandmother and my paternal aunt and uncle. So it was a large household. My parents were not very religious, but they were very God-fearing. And they inculcated in us honesty, principles of honesty and integrity. If you see the first photograph, I have something to say on that.
Yes, thank you for sharing those photographs, Dr. Katrak. And in the first one, I think is the picture of a baby.
Yes.
And we assume that is you.
This was taken in 1945. And I had a birth weight of 10 pounds and 6 ounces. And it was believed to be a very healthy baby. It is only later when I joined medical college that I realized that pre-diabetic mothers have large babies. And sure enough, my mother became diabetic at a later age. So I think this was a rather false appearance for a very healthy baby. Now, as you know, we were a middle class family, but we were never wanting in any of the things that we required for day-to-day life. As you know, my father was a very famous song recordist for the Bollywood films.
Minu Katrak.
Minu Katrak. And in 1952, he, with his partner, a gentleman called Aspi Irani, wanted to make a movie called My Orvo. And the second photograph is taken at the Murat ceremony. It is very interesting that as you see from left to right, that's my father. He's standing with Raj Kapoor, Prithviraj Kapoor, Madhubala. Yes. And in that film, they were going to introduce Shami Kapoor.
Is that Shami Kapoor, the lanky man?
Yes, the long lanky fellow was Shami Kapoor. Unfortunately, the film didn't see the day of the light of day. And Shami Kapoor was introduced in some other movie. Can I have the next photograph? And this photograph shows my father, Shami Kapoor, Prithviraj, and Madhubala. And on the left of Madhubala is his partner, Aspi Irani. But the little guy in front, standing in short pants with a bottle of soft drinks.
That's you.
Is Sarosh Katrak. So, you know, I just thought those were little pleasant memories of childhood. And in 1954, I had my Navjot. And by that time, Raj Kapoor had produced his movie Avara.
Right.
And lo and behold, he came to my Navjot ceremony. And the next photograph was published in a newspaper called Screen, which was
Wow.
published by the Blitz. And this shows Sarosh Katrak posing with Raj Kapoor and Nargis. So I had a little claim to fame even in my childhood.
Even as an adolescent.
As a little guy, I had a little claim to fame. But as I grew older, I didn't get enamored by the Indian film industry. I went further and further away. There were no doctors in my family, and I didn't have a calling for medicine. In interscience, I was rather poor in mathematics. So it became physics, chemistry, and biology.
Right.
And that's how I entered medical college. Uh, Throughout my undergraduate days, we were very fun loving. And I'll tell you a very interesting incident. You know the neurologist Matthew Abraham,
Yeah.
who was my student. And we had gone to his house in Kochi for dinner. And I was accompanied by one of my classmates called Fatma Patel and her husband Subhash Patel. And like all postgraduate students, you find that Matthew would keep calling you sir, sir, sir all the time. You know. So Fatma, being from America, got a little fed up of him calling me sir all the time. And she went up to Matthew and said, Matthew, do you know what this Babaji used to do as an undergraduate? He one day stole the car of his wife, Ahalya, who was not his wife at that stage, but she was my girlfriend. And she said, he stole this car and he used to play a lot of mischief. So I think Matthew, in some ways, was shell shocked. And when I requested Matthew that I wanted to see the backwaters from his rear yard, he took me there. And when we were all alone, he very sort of hesitantly asked me, okay, sir, what Madam is saying, Madam Patel is saying, is it really true? I said, yes, Matthew, we were very fun loving. And we enjoyed ourselves during our undergraduate days. And I used to play a lot of mischief. He sort of shook his head and said, I think she spoiled my image of Dr. Katrak. I always thought that you would be extremely academic throughout your career. I said, sorry to break that image, but I really loved life. But when it came down to working, we really got down to work.
So, Dr. Katrak, we would really like to know from you as to what was the inspiration for you to become a neurologist? I mean, we know that people who do medicine, many physicians have this ambition to be a great cardiologist or other specialty exponents and experts. So, what drew you to neurology? Because we know that you excelled in it in a absolutely exemplary manner.
I'll tell you, when I became a postgraduate student, I thought I had inherited my father's acute sense of hearing. And as an undergraduate, I had picked up a pre-systolic murmur, you know. And in those days, as you know, auscultation was part and parcel of a cardiologist's uh, clinical examination.
Acumen, yes.
So my whole impression was to become a cardiologist. And I went through MD in internal medicine thinking that I'll become a cardiologist. But as part of our MD in internal medicine, we all had to do a post in neurology because the long cases in the exams were always neurology. So I started my house post on the 1st of February 1970 under Dr. Nhwadia, B.S. Singhal, because there was one unit at that stage. And there was a third neurologist called Dr. Shikovas. And pretty soon, I found out that I had an aptitude for neurology and neurological diagnosis. However, it started as a big disaster. And I distinctly remember my first round with Dr. Nhwadia. And the patient had a pyramidal tract signs. I don't remember exactly, but I remember his questions. After reciting the history, he asked me, any long tract signs? And he saw the confused look on my face. So he went a little further, very patiently, he went a little further and said, any pyramidal tract signs, any spinothalamic signs? Again, he saw the confused look on my face. And then he went further to say, okay, brisk reflexes, extensor plantars, any sensory loss. And I said, yes, he's got that. And I recited. So he looked at me through his half moon glasses, thinking, I don't know what this guy is going to be. But I pulled up my socks and started reading. And within 3 months of my house post, I get a summons. Sakaram, who was Dr. Wadia's major domo, came up to me and said, Wadia Saab and Dr. Singhal would like to see you in Dr. Wadia's office. I got very sort of nervous. And I went into the office and I knocked on the door and entered the office. There was Dr. Wadia sitting behind his desk. Besides him was Dr. B.S. Singhal. And in those days, Dr. Singhal had this habit of folding his glasses, holding them like that, and touching the side of his nose where the pads touch. And he was looking at me. And suddenly Dr. Wadia said, both Bim and I feel that you have a slant for neurology. And pretty soon, we will be getting the DM in neurology at JJ Hospital. And I would like you to be my postgraduate student. I really got puffed up, but I wanted to say yes immediately. I said, sir, but can I just think about it and let you know tomorrow? I went out and I had to have a word with two people. One was, of course, my girlfriend at that stage, now my wife, Ahalya. And the other person was my great friend, Dr. Ajay Chitnis. And when I recited this whole story, whole episode to them, they said, take it up, sir. So that is when I made up my mind that I wanted to do neurology. I
Yes,
was not destined to be a neurologist. I was perhaps destined to be a neurologist because it drew me away from cardiology. Okay.
and
So
we all
that
know
is,
that you've had a very illustrious and very productive association with Dr. Nhwadia and Dr. Singhal at the JJ Hospital. And a lot of very seminal research came through when you worked with them. And would you be able to share with the listeners today some anecdotes that you think are very pleasant in your memories of your time of association with these two stalwarts in neurology? And everyone listening here know them, they know you, and I'm sure they will Enjoy it.
I'd like to recount two episodes. As a houseman, about 3 to 4 months into the housemanship, house post, I was looking after a patient with nutritional deficiency. And he had severe burning dysesthesias in both feet. And this guy would lie down on the bed with his hips and knees flexed, with the feet hanging in midair. And every time Dr. Wadia would come for the rounds, he was a bhaiya. So he would have a sing-song voice and he'd say, Dr. Saab, mujhe bacha lo, Dr. Saab, mujhe bacha lo. And Dr. Wadia would console him by saying, अरे बेटा रोने का नहीं, सब देखते हैं, ठीक हो जाओगे आप, ठीक हो जाओगे, this and that. And doctor, this happened once, this happened twice, this happened 3 times. And on the fourth occasion, when Dr. Wadia came for the rounds, this Bhaiya ji was rather relatively short, jumped out of the bed, hugged Dr. Wadia by the waist and said, Pitaji, mujhe bacha lo. So Dr. Wadia in his typical Parsi Gujarati said, Beti baap mane baat kaun banavyo. I turned around and had the audacity to tell him, okay, every day you call him beta, beta, beta. So today you're Pitaji. So he had a rather stern look, which then emerged into a big smile, big toothy grin on his, and he just hugged the fellow and said, sit down, beta, rone ka nahi." He had this habit of saying beta.
Yes.
And that habit
It persisted. Yes, it
that
persisted
habit
throughout
didn't
his
go
life.
with that. Now, the second episode is about Dr. Singhal. Everybody knows that Dr. Singhal is very soft-spoken. He never raises his voice. I am perhaps the only person who has seen Dr. Singhal's voice going in a crescendo. We had a patient, Dr. Singhal had admitted a patient called Sadashiv. I distinctly remember. And he had malignant papulosis and he had parietal lobe signs. And Dr. Singhal was very interested that we had to do an angiogram to rule out vasculitis as a cause for his parietal lobe signs. So he was taken up for an angiogram. Now, in those days, the registrars and had to do all the air studies, angiograms, pneumoencephalograms, myelograms, etc. They were not done as you all have the luxury of an MRI or a CT and everything is done for you. But we had to do it ourselves. So my registrar had taken this patient up for the angiogram. His name will not be said. And we used to give 100 milligrams of pethidine and 50 milligrams of phenergan for sedation. And then we had to do the angiogram by a stab puncture in the neck.
Carotid.
So it seems that Sadashiv kept moving. And the registrar wanted to impress Dr. Singhal by doing a fine angiography without any movement artifact. So to cut a long story short, he gave a total of about 200 milligrams of pethidine, 100 milligrams of phenergan, about 15 milligrams of morphine, and the crowning glory was about 100 milligrams of phenobarbital given intracarotid, like your VADAS test. And the patient was brought down. And I was on the rounds with Dr. Singhal when the patient was brought on a trolley and dumped into the bed. And Dr. Singhal, in a very soft voice, said, Sarosh, I think this fellow is very heavily sedated. And I said, no, sir, 100 milligrams of pethidine, 50 of Phenergan. He said, nahi, 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 that is too much. Dr. Dadich at Bombay Hospital does it with 50 pethidine and 25 Phenergan. So I just kept quiet. Suddenly, the nurse came and put the injection sheet into a tray by the side of the bed. And Dr. Singhal started reading it. And that was a time when I heard his voice in crescendo. 200 pethidine, 100 Phenergan, and then 15 milligrams morphine. And he asked the sister, what is this Phenobarb 100 IC? So she said, idhar diya tha. And Dr. Singhal went, high crescendo voice. That was the only time I've heard his voice going into high crescendo. And he patted Sadashiv on his face. Fortunately, Sadashiv just moved his hands. One side was paralyzed, so the other side he moved. And then some life came into Dr. Singhal. But he told me, I want you to give him a little mannitol, flush the whole thing out, and please report to me in the evening. So those were not the days of mobile phones and whatnot. So I had to telephone him in the evening and tell him that Sadashiv was quite okay and fighting fit. But that was the only time that I have heard Dr. Singhal's voice go high up into a crescendo. Subsequently, I think he's such a soft-spoken person that if you're standing far away from him on the rounds,
You can't hear
you
them.
cannot hear them. So those are two episodes which really stuck in my mind about working with them. But by that time, initially, we were addressed as Katrak. And slowly and surely, by the end of my housemanship, I was converted to Sarosh. So I knew I had made it.
So who were your friends during your neurology training days? Who were you close to amongst
You
your
must
colleagues
remember,
and classmates?
yeah, you must remember one thing, that we were the first batch of DM Neurology, the Bombay University.
Mm-hmm.
So there was not a big line of postgraduate students like what you all had.
Right.
And I think during my time, I was Dr. Nhwadia's first postgraduate student. But he also took in my very good friend, Dr. H.V. Srinivas, who is now in Bangalore.
Yeah.
And there was another person called M.S. Bhatt, Mulki S. Bhatt. Now he's gone off to Santa Cruz. We've lost all touch and contact with him. But HV and I, and when you ask him what is his name, he will always say HV. So I still call him HV, And we are very close. We are good friends. We are very close friends. On the other side of the bridge, there was KEM Hospital. And there was Praveena Shah. And although there was a rivalry between KEM and JJ Hospital, that was never manifest in our relationship. And Praveena and I are still very good friends. We talk to each other, we communicate with each other. As postgraduates in internal medicine, I was very close to two people. One was my friend, Dr. Sadashiv Sathe, who was my classmate in school and then in medical college. And he did his MS in general surgery first, and then did his MS in orthopedic surgery and became an orthopedic surgeon. So our careers were in parallel. The other person whom I became very fond of, and we were very close, was my late friend, Dr. Ajay Chitnis. You know, and unfortunately, I've lost both of them. Dr. Sadashiv Sathe passed out after a brief illness in 2013, and Ajay Chitnis, as you know, passed out in 2018. But I really missed them. As regards my colleagues in neurology, I have become very fond with many of them when we have been co-examiners. I can give you the specific example of Dr. Mohandas.
Right.
I had heard of Dr. Mohandas from Dr. Nhwadia, but I'd never met him personally. And we became co-examiners at the All India Institute. And we found out that we were on the same wavelength. And we got along merrily, even in the exams, out of the exams, and subsequently quite a lot. And through Dr. Mohandas, I got to know Dr. Subhash Kaur. I went in 1994 as an examiner to PGI Chandigarh. And I've become friends with the candidates who I examined.
Gagandeep Singh and
Yeah,
Lal, I think.
yeah, Vivek Lal and Dr. Gagandeep Singh. And I'll tell you a joke. At that stage, Vivek Lal was a little more podgier than what he is now. And he had a nice mustache and very pleasant smile in the exams. And when it came to discussing the results, I said, no, I think we should pass Vivek Lal. So Dr. Prabhakar asked me, why do you want to pass Vivek Lal? So I jokingly said, he reminds me of Satish Shah, the actor in Ye Jo Hai Zindagi. All of them started laughing, Dr. Prabhakar. I said, no, seriously, I think he has potentials. So I think we should let go. And I was always reminded of Dr. Lele. Dr. Lele was educated in Usmania in Hyderabad. And then he went off to Nagpur and he started the MBBS course there. And for the final MBBS exams, he thought he'd call his mentor from Hyderabad, Dr. Bankit Chandra. And Dr. Lele wanted to maintain a high standard, But Bankit Chandra was letting people go, pass. So very gingerly, he asked Bankit Chandra, sir, just maintain the standards, this and that. So Bankit Chandra turned around and told him, अरे बेटा, तुझे कितना मालूम था जब तू पास हुआ? जाने दो, बच्चे हैं, सीख जाएंगे बाद में. And sure enough, I think many of them have achieved a very big standard in life. So I carry that philosophy when I'm an examiner.
Yes.
You never judge the performance of a candidate in the 2 days or 3 days of the examination when they are under extreme stress. The only purpose it serves is to see how they will perform in an emergency in real life.
So they get a 00 license in neurology.
And I always say, having passed your exams, you are now faced with the biggest exam of your life. That is your life. How you treat your career in neurology. So that is my philosophy. Although I'm very strict in the exams, but at the same time, I'm very fair.
I know, because when we joined you as students, we were told as an aside that he is very, very strict, but his bark is much worse than his bite.
I know.
So deep down, he will make sure that you learn neurology, and I think that that has been very, very true in your mentorship and guidance and the way you have handled students over the decades. Do you want to tell us maybe a little bit about your career after JJ at the Jaslok Hospital, where you served illustriously for a long time before we perhaps move on to your family?
Yeah. Uh, you see, unfortunately, because of stupid rules, you cannot be a teacher for DNB in neurology when you're a teacher elsewhere for DM. So although I used to teach at Jaslok Hospital, right from 1978 when I joined, I've been teaching the houseman at the rounds, this and that, been taking clinics also. But I was never recognized as a teacher until 2002 when I retired from JJ Hospital. Only then could I be recognized as a teacher at Jaslok Hospital and have a postgraduate student of my own. But that didn't prevent me from teaching. You all were there. Fali was there. There were many other students who were there. Many of them have gone abroad. But I love teaching. And I find that I have an aptitude to teach. So I love teaching. And what I feel is that it is through my teaching that I keep up to date with my subject. Because we get racehorses like you, Nimish Thakur, Ami Mankodi, Chittaranjan Shah Rao. And it is difficult to keep pace with all these guys, including you, if you're not up to it. And I remember once Dr. Nhwadia telling me towards the end of his career, he said, Sarosh, if you feel that I'm coming apart at the seams, it is your duty to tell me that I'm coming apart at the seams. I will retire. Fortunately, I must say that he never came apart at the seams. And the same is true for Dr. Singhal. That is why I admire them and I hold them up on a pedestal. So that is at Jaslok Hospital, I used to do teaching. I used to admit cases, take rounds, and it is true, Jaslok has also given me many things. It has given me a wider base for my academic as well as my teaching career. Okay. They encourage teaching. And when I took up the WFN Continuum course, I think I received a lot of support from the management of Jaslok Hospital, including my office on the 11th floor, which was essentially for all these academic activities. So I think we found a very good balance between clinical practice, private practice, and academic practice. And that is why I think, so to say, Nhwadia Gharana of clinical neurology is famous and respected throughout India, of which you and I and guys like Satish Khadilkar and others are part of.
Great. So, amongst the other things that people don't, among the other facets of your very uh, uh, pleasant and fun personality, people do not know that besides being very astute neurologist, a very meticulous and good clinician, a wonderful teacher in neurosciences to students, people don't know that you are also a connoisseur of single malt and that you are a wonderful photographer. Um,
Let's
so,
take the single malt first.
and we know you up close and personal. So we know that there are many other tenets to your personality that are really wonderful. So would you tell us how you got involved in appreciating? Yeah, there's your photograph in Australia, I think.
That is for travel. That's not my photograph, obviously, but I'll tell you about this. You know about it. Uh, we had gone to Cairns, you know,
Yeah.
and in Cairns there is a adventure outing called canopy surfing. And in the canopy surfing, uh, they take you on a slope hill, and you have to go about 200 meters, 300 meters upslope. After that, there are about 5 trees, very tall trees, and they have built a netting platform on the trees. So the first tree you have to climb up, get onto the platform, and there are very muscular tour guides there who take you up to the second tree, winch you up, and from there, then you go in a cradle up to the third tree and to the fourth tree. And from the fourth tree, it is a slope downwards. So you don't require any wind. So you sit in the cradle, and then they tell you you can fall back and hook your legs around the cable so that you go upside down, and then they'll send you
Right
right
down.
down. So that's what I did there. Like Tarzan, you keep shouting like "Ah." And I have several photographs of Ahalia trying to do that, but somehow the other not getting upside down. you know, Ultimately managing it, and then we came down. We were given helmets, and I was Yoda, my helmet, and her helmet was called Skippy. It's the kangaroo. So it's like we like enjoying and doing things. Now, regarding malt whiskies, I am fond of malt whiskies, but like all good things, if you do it within limitations, it is enjoyable. I think, as I call it, the Aam Janta will go in for Glenfiddich and Glenlivet and whatnot. And my tastes have gone a little bit higher. I go for certain unusual malt whiskies like Ardbeg, Corryvreckan, or Ugedal, which are very potent. Huh? They are about 62% weight by volume. So you have to dilute them to enjoy them. And I like exploring. Nowadays, my son has gone into malt whiskies also. And he really specializes in malt whiskies which are made in Australia. And I look forward to tasting some of the malt whiskies that he has collected and kept for me. My daughter is into rum. So I get a variety of education when I go to Australia and visit there. Now, photography. In 2004, I went to Bandhavgarh And in Bandhavgarh, I shot, and those days were not your digital cameras, they were film cameras. And if you get a hit rate of a good photographs of 10 to 16 out of your 36, it should be considered good. And you know my mentor in photography, Kakubai.
Kakubai
Kothari.
Kotai.
So I took my photographs to him and I got about 16 or 17 per roll of 36. So he encouraged me, get into it. So it is from 2004 that I've gone into photography, not only wildlife, but I like birds, animals, uh, architecture, etc. And if you see this photograph, I'm particularly fond of it because I think it's like a portrait of a peacock. And surprisingly, this is not taken in India. It is taken in Adelaide.
At the zoo.
Yeah, when we went to a zoo, the peacock had come out of its holding, and there it was in its full glory. And we used the peacock's face and kept the feathers as background. So I'm really fond of this photograph, which I think is like a portrait of her. The other photograph that I'd like to show you, this is the ceiling of the Jain temple in Ranakpur, South Rajasthan. And apart from Dilwara temples in Mount Abu, this is the other, which is a must see for anybody who's fond of.
Awesome.
Look at this, one piece of marble, and you can see the layers from the outside to the inside. There are about 7 layers, and from one block of marble, they had to carve this. And look at the fantasy. If you enlarge this thing, it practically looks like lace work.
Phenomenal.
It is so phenomenal. So that is my fondness. My other fondness is calligraphy. I enjoy using fountain pens. I don't like to write with ball pens. I enjoy using fountain pens. And I've always used the fountain pen throughout my career, even to write my clinical notes in my rooms, etc.
I think you had a fondness for a lovely purple color when we were residents with you.
Yeah.
And you used to
Now
sign in that purple color.
I'm practicing calligraphy at this one. And this is a plaque which was in Cornwall Park in New Zealand. And I really enjoyed what they have written. I think this is a message for the future generation that they who plant an avenue of trees cannot, in the nature of things, hope to enjoy them in their maturity and grandeur. They plant for generations unborn. Much as we have a prize today comes to us from our fathers. They did not build or make to last their time, but rather that something worthy should mark their passage and be their memorial. And this is a beautiful park full of trees in Auckland. The next one, I think, when I see something that I think is worthwhile, I practice that saying down in calligraphy. And this one is another one. It does not cost much to practice or lead with empathy, but we can make a big difference to people around us by doing so. Not only will we all be more productive, but we will be happier people. And the other one is something that I really enjoy. You have to mark Alia. Sorry, sorry for that. The price of discipline is always less than the pain of regret. I think this is for postgraduate students. They have to have some form of discipline in their life.
Absolutely.
Okay. So these are the two things that I like doing.
And we all know that behind every successful man lies an even greater woman actually telling him what to do. So we are
As
aware
I
of
put it, as I put it,
Ahalia's role in your life.
as
And
I put it, somebody gave me a small photograph for my present. That behind every successful man is an exhausted woman. And I think Ahalia is an epitome of that. I
so
was
where
never
did you meet her?
very,
You met her in medical college.
I'll tell you, uh, she has been my classmate. We were classmates in Xavier's College from 1961 to 63. But at that stage, we hardly exchanged two words. She was part of the basketball team where my cousin sister, Mayor Katrak, the lady who makes chalk
Chocolates.
affairs, chocolates.
Affairs.
Yeah, she was the captain of the basketball team. So it is through her that I knew that Ahalia was in the basketball team. Come Grant Medical College, and I owe a lot to Grant Medical College, both for my education and in life, because it has given me my girlfriend for 55 years and my wife for 49 years. Okay. We started dating in 1966 and we got married in 1972. She has been the mainstay of my family.
Is this a picture that you
She
have taken?
she gave up her career as a pediatrician and as a clinical neurophysiologist to look after the family and to see that my career goes on. And this is me with her in 1994 in Kodaikanal, when I had gone there for a conference. And she learned computers at a very early stage. And she used to type out all my notes, letters, correspondence, etc.
She did
And
your
watch the
PowerPoint
room.
slides, right? When we were
Yes,
students.
and all my slides. She still does my slides. And very often we jokingly do the slides, and when she gets fed up, I said, put a bullet there. She said, no, put a bullet here in my brains, chewing my brains out. But we manage. All my slides, even today, are done by her, basically. And without her, I would have been nowhere. I must also acknowledge the contributions of my children because they sacrificed many years of their childhood. Okay, these are some of the funny things that we did. We went to Australia and went to a reptile park in 2017. And we took a photograph with a reticulated python from Burma. So we like doing things like that, stupid things, but enjoyable things. And the python is really bonding with us. Okay. So I was saying, my children, they sacrificed the many years of their childhood quality time, but they never once complained. And Ahalya took care of that. So I am extremely grateful to my children also.
Well, yeah.
Shehzad on the right, Shehzad and Geetanjali. And this photograph was taken when Geetanjali got her PhD in marine biology. So there are 3 doctors in our family, and Shehzad is the only non-doctor. but he's a electronic engineer in a firm which does testing, and he's now become the head tester in that firm, with whom he's been there for the last 14 years. Gitanjali works in an environmental essay agency called uh, what's it called? Ecologies. I forget the name just now. Her boss
That's
is
very, very
David
unusual.
Roberts. David Robert, you know, and
Uh,
they do environmental essays because you have to give your carbon uh, things. Only then will the Australian government allow you to build a park or build a this. How many native plants are you removing? How many addition plants are you putting in? So Geetanjali really Cumberland Ecology. Sorry, that's the name of her company, and she really enjoys her work, and she's into environment, this and that. They are both very happy, and now that I've retired, I can spend plenty of time going to Australia. This damn COVID pandemic put a spoke in the wheels for the last 3 years. So now I'm looking forward to going there now that things have opened up.
so coming to that, actually, uh, for many of us, you have been a torchbearer for many seminal facets of neurology. And I would personally say that we always thought of you very highly. But when you actually chose to walk your talk and you did retire the day you said you wanted to retire, and we were all with you, associated you for with you for so long. And I think it was the most phenomenal thing because I do know that when you retired, you were perhaps one of the busiest neurologists at the Jaslock Hospital and in practice in South Bombay. And I'm wondering whether you have any pearls of wisdom to share with lower mortals like us who are still running on the hedonic treadmill of practice and work, in regard to calling it a day, and finding a perspective on life.
See, I feel I've learned many things from Dr. Wadia, and I've seen Dr. Wadia practice. You know, he was devoted to neurology, and he went on practicing till the age of, I think, 85, when his health really gave way and he was more or less restricted to home. So I thought to myself, it is better to retire at an age when your health permits you to enjoy your retirement. And in this respect, I was supported by my good friend Ajay Chitnis, who used to tell me, Sarosh, I'm going to retire at the age of 75. Enough is enough, you know. And the mahal of practice with medico-legal problems, etc., was also a deterrent. I took it upon myself that I will retire at the age of 75. I achieved 75. That was in 2019. Unfortunately, my fellow in arms in the retirement decision died in 2018. Dr. Ajay Chitnis, unfortunately. But I kept my word to him and I retired. Uh, I wanted to travel. There are about 37 UNESCO heritage sites in India. And I want to, and two more have been added recently. So I wanted to travel and take photographs of this, all the UNESCO heritage sites in India. I have seen many of them, but whatever I have not seen, I would like to take photographs. And then I would like to write a book about photographs which tell a story. I can give you one example of that. If you look at the calligraphy that is written on the frontage of the Taj Mahal, you know, it is, if you stand at the base, you see the lettering. It appears one size. And it will appear the same size when you look at the top writings of the Quran, you know, which is 150 feet up. So they had followed the principle Snellen in his acuity of vision charts. But the Taj Mahal was in 1365 and Snellen was in 1800. So it was nearly 500 years before. They knew of the principle. Then I went into the background of who the calligrapher was. He was given the title of Amanat Khan by Shah Jahan,
Yeah.
meaning a jewel, you know. And he had an elder brother who was one of the wazirs of Shah Jahan. Unfortunately, after he completed his work on the Taj Mahal, his brother died. And Shah Jahan built a tomb for his brother on the east bank of the Yamuna, which was a very elaborate, next to Salim Chisti's tomb.
Mausoleum.
Mausoleum. His brother would not have all these structures. So he built a sarai or a rest house on the main Lahore to Agra road.
Right.
And on that sarai, there are calligraphic inscriptions which are similar to the Taj Mahal. Now, this sarai is 29 southwest, southeast of Amritsar on Taran highway. Now, I read about these things and now I want to go and photograph them. And then write up a story about all this, which becomes informative also, and which improves my also reading about the subject. Did you know that there are 5 schools of Islamic calligraphy?
No.
And, and one of the schools is by this Amanat Khan.
Right.
You know, he was actually from Persia. And they migrated to India. Okay, and because he was a calligrapher, he looked after the library of Shah Jahan.
Right.
So, reading such things about India, and I like reading about these things. and like writing about them. And I have to have a photograph of my own, which will tell the story thereafter.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, Dr. Katrak, we are
So
nearing
there are so
the
many things in.
end of our time allotted for this lovely morning and interview. And in the last few minutes of our conversation today, I believe you have some advice for younger neurologists who are picking up their careers in neurology. And I'm sure they will find this very useful in time to come. And in your parting words, we would be waiting to hear from you on this aspect of life.
See, I will begin that Dr. Wadia gave me a testimonial when I went to New Zealand, to Martin Pollock, my mentor there. And when I came back from New Zealand, he gave me a carbon copy of that testimonial. And in that testimonial, he had written very clearly, Sarosh Katrak is not brilliant. But what he lacks in brilliance, he makes up by sheer dint of hard work. Now, the average neurologist is not brilliant. And I'm giving my example to exemplify that. But for your lack of brilliance, you can make up by sheer dint of hard work. And that is the first thing that I would advise students to do. Hard work mixed with honesty and integrity. The second thing is by these fantastic words of Sir Robert Hutchinson. Those of you who have put examinations behind, you will be thinking in terms of professional success and naturally look far ahead. Let me advise you not to aim too high. The big prizes in our profession are owing much happiness gain. Seeketh thou great things, seeketh them not, as the wise man said. Now, listen to what he advises. If you have earned enough for your needs and have been able to put a little aside for your old age, and if at the same time you have won the esteem of your colleagues and the affection of your patients, then you have done well enough. And that measure of success should be within the reach of most of you. This is my real advice to the students. Okay. The next advice, can you show me the next calligraphy? Yeah. Now people always look at us, honorary neurologists or consultants in private practice and say, you're making money, you're making money. Okay. However, let me say, this say is very good. It is good to have money and the things that money can buy, as long as you make sure that you don't lose the things money can't buy. Therefore, use neurology to make money, but always be for your family. Okay? And
Great.
that is my. So mix life and neurology in a proper admixture, and you will be happy in life.
Thank you, Dr. Katrak.
Okay?
You
Not all of us are.
you really have made this morning very
Sorry.
rewarding, and I'm pretty certain that everyone who listens to this video will come away uh, enriched by the interaction that we've had today. And on behalf of the IAN, let me thank you again for sparing your time, for sharing your words of wisdom, and allowing us to get to know you better, though we do know you, to know you better through this interview. And thank you very much for being here. And I'm pretty certain everyone will have enjoyed this morning's outing. Thank you and goodbye.
Can I say just a few words?
Yes, please.
I would like to say that my journey in neurology has been very fruitful. Besides private practice, clinical practice, my main focus has been on teaching, and I'm extremely proud to have taught people like you, Fali, Kailash Bhatia,
Yes, he mentioned that. He mentioned that
Ami
in his.
Mankodi,
Yes.
Ami Mankodi. And of course, they have made a big name for them abroad. But in India, I'm very proud of you all, very proud of Satish, very proud of Jimmy Lalkaka, Satish Khadilkar, and a score of other students who are doing very well. And that has made life very fulfilling. And when I retire, I can retire with a very satisfied heart that I leave behind a legacy for students to follow. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Dr.
It was
Katrak.
a
Thank
pleasure
you.
doing this
Thank
interview.
you.
It was a pleasure doing this interview.
The pleasure was mutual. Thank you very much.
Thank you.